Welcome back to the Bears Talk Ireland podcast as we continue to talk all things Chicago Bears in an off-season that has definitely had some things to discuss with changes in the front office, the coaching staff, changes to the playing squad and just pretty much keeping us going. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Bears beat reporter Dan Wiederer from the Chicago Tribune and also the host of the Take the North podcast to go through some of the moves made by the Bears over the last few months. Dan, welcome back to the show.
It's great to be here. It feels like it hasn't been that long since we last talked, but so much has happened that it feels like it was forever ago that we talked because it's a whole different situation for the Bears right now.
Absolutely. And I actually said welcome back to the show there. Obviously, it's not welcome back to this show. This is a new show. That's a previous life kind of creeping in there. Obviously, we talked when I was part of another show. But yeah, I mean, before we even get into the moves made with the players and stuff over the last couple of weeks, the last time we talked, the Bears were in the middle of a search for a head coach. And we know I kind of put you on the spot to see where you thought they'd end up. And you did say Ben Johnson. So you got that one there. When you look now at everything that's happened, I mean, it feels like such a long time ago now, given everything else that's happened. But when you look at, obviously, the way the Bears went about the search, obviously got the man that they wanted, who was highly coveted. And then you see, the Ben Johnson effect maybe we've seen in certain moves and the coaching staff. How do you see the whole process so far? And look, we're a long way away from the season, but as much as you can kind of gauge now, how kind of positive do you think things have been at Hallis Hall with the move that's been made?
Yeah, I think the adjective that I would label the last 3 months with is aggressive. They've been aggressive in everything they've done, from landing Ben and making sure that they didn't let him get away and met his price and made him their next head coach, to these moves that they've made through trades and free agency to set themselves up for more success on their lines. They've been aggressive in everything they've done. And I just got done recording my own podcast, Take the North, and we were talking about how almost all of these moves to this point make sense. And it's one of those off seasons where you're like, okay, yeah, they understood what they needed and they went out and got what they needed in a very aggressive and purposeful manner. That's encouraging for sure. And now I think you said it well there a minute ago that all of this eventually has to translate into on-field success. Otherwise, it's just another one of these, March parades that we're used to having here in Chicago for, yay, the Bears are turning things around. And then they finish in last place with 12 losses again. They've got to turn it into on-field success, but everything they've done to this point has made sense and it's been aggressive.
When we talk about, obviously, Ben Johnson coming in, we know, obviously, Ryan Poles is the GM. He makes the moves and does what has to be done. But when you look at the moves made, do you see the Ben Johnson kind of stamp on certain moves and how maybe things are being handled now in Hallis Hall and with the Bears, given to how they may have been before? Can you see where Ben Johnson is kind of putting himself into this roster and into this team?
Time will tell a little bit on how this is all working, and we've got to learn more about the dynamics between Ryan and Ben. They're obviously both in the front seat of the car. I'm trying to get a better gauge on who's at the steering wheel for most of these moves and who's putting the foot on the gas, and how is that process working? Are they splitting the driving? Are they, collaborating in that regard? Or is one guy, got the foot on the pedal and the other guy giving directions from the shotgun seat? Fascinating to see how this evolves over time. The two guys obviously felt really strongly when they interviewed together about their ability to create alignment and energy in their relationship, and they've done so in the early stages of their time working together. Ryan Poles said something that was pretty interesting at the Combine last month, where he said, when you have a very clear vision, it allows you to be more aggressive. And so where I see this more than anything having Ben's fingerprints on it is the clear vision that he's communicated to Ryan Poles and his front office staff that has allowed them to go out and then make very, very direct moves to address positions of needs with guys that make sense to address those positions of need.
And again, on Ben Johnson, I mean, for him himself, as somebody who's come up from the OC position to a head coach, we know there's always going to be question marks until we see these guys actually during the season. But in terms of just his interviews, how he's come across to yourselves, how he's kind of answered questions and how he's handled the brief time he's been the head coach, I mean, does he impress you as a person, as a leader of men that can come into this team? Look, we talk about winning press conferences. At the end of the day, that's not really important. That's nice at the time, but it doesn't really affect the game. But it is still nice if they can come in and, as I say, win the press conference and maybe get that little bit of hope and confidence through the fans and everybody else around the team. But how has Ben Johnson come across to you so far in this short time?
Well, it starts with the players, and what you're speaking to there is presence. And I really do think, particularly in a city like Chicago, that presence matters because you're going to be on stage for your entire time as the head coach of this football team. And so you have to be able to communicate and share your philosophies and your vision in a way that resonates. And obviously it has to resonate first with the players, otherwise it means nothing. But then when you're selling that vision to the outside world, there has to be some juice to it, some energy that people say, yeah, like this, I believe in this, and I want to devote myself to following where this is going to go. Selfishly, as a reporter, I've appreciated how direct Ben is to this stage as a communicator, and more than anything, the passion he has. You can feel it whenever you're around him. He's got a real passion for the job. That's gonna be infectious to his staff, to the players, to everyone in that building. You want to ride that as long as possible because that passion can give you a little bit of momentum and a little bit of fuel. And they're going to need that for these next 5.5 months as they get ready for a season that now has expectations on it, right? Like this isn't your classic reboot. New coach comes in, nobody's expecting anything of the team. Ben himself said when he was introduced at Hallis Hall that this team can win and this team can win now. He's going to be held to that standard.
Absolutely. And you mentioned staff there as well. Obviously, there's been an interesting mix in terms of a staff. Offensive coordinator Declan Doyle is kind of a young and experienced guy who's come in, but obviously we know Ben Johnson will run that offense, so you're not too worried about that. Then you have a Dennis Allen who's hugely experienced, and Al Harris comes in as the DB's coach, and we have Eric Bieniemy. So it's an interesting bunch of coaches coming in, who some young, but others who have experience. I mean, how is that coaching staff? I know that there's other guys there as well that are big names. So how has that kind of come together for you? Do you think this is the right mix for a team? Because we know there were some questions last year about accountability. We can all talk about the Tyreek Stevenson incident, and you're wondering who was there to really grab these players and get them in line. Do you think these are the coaches here now? Obviously, Antoine Randall comes in as well. Do you think these guys now are the coaches that can really have that authority over the players and bring in that accountability and that kind of structure that I think was missing in previous coaching regimes and is hopefully there now?
I'm glad that you brought up Randall L's name because that was the other name I was going to throw in there. That's another guy. He's going to be the receivers coach and the assistant head coach that brings juice to the building every single day. And so I think he will be beneficial of creating that energy you want to get things launched properly. Eric Bieniemy, a guy that I heard a lot about at the scouting combine in Indianapolis, is a guy. He's going to be coaching running backs now. It's a lesser role than he's been in his last few stops, but he brings an edge to the practice field, and those running backs are going to be coached hard, and they're going to be held to a standard, and there's going to be details that are stressed. And if those details are being missed, there will be call outs, right? There will be what you said, accountability, and that is going to permeate, right? Like that's what you want out of your assistant coaching staff, is a group that understands what the standard is, where the bar is, and when the standard's not met, there has to be consequences. And so that, I think, is going to be fascinating to watch. I think they do have the right coaches in the building to help with that. I will also say that I was not surprised, but definitely struck by the number of people that came up to me in Indianapolis and talked about Dennis Allen's value to Ben Johnson. This is a guy that has head coaching experience, can help take some things off Ben's plate, can help him troubleshoot and identify, his own blind spots as a head coach that need to be addressed. And you can also just turn the defense over to him as you're getting your offense off the ground. Ben's going to have to spend a lot of time in this offseason with Caleb Williams. In order to do that, he's got to trust that his defense is able to keep up and build themselves while he's working on the quarterback and the offense. And Dennis Allen's just the guy to do that. I think it's going to be really interesting and valuable for him to be able to be a resource for Ben in that regard.
Yeah, I completely agree. I was going to kind of mention that. It kind of feels like Dennis Allen is the head coach of the defense, and that just frees Ben Johnson up then to really get into that offense and see what he can do with them. So I think it's exciting. I mean, I look at a lot of the names coming in, like Eric Bieniemy, who for a long time was talked about as possible head coach and has been an offensive coordinator. So it's going to be interesting to see where that all kind of goes. But I think it does feel positive. But when we talk about now, obviously, again, all of that feels like so long ago, given everything else that's happened. But I just kind of wanted to touch onto it with yourself because, as we've talked before previously, but when we look at the other moves now, the recent moves in terms of the players, and before we even get into free agency, which was just a crazy first day for the Bears, we had the two trades for the Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney, which kind of felt like they came out of nowhere. When you look at those two trades, given everything about the offensive line, year in, year out, we talk about this offensive line. I mean, when you look at these two trades, how do you rate the trades? Do you think these are good moves given what they've given up and kind of the cap hits and salaries that come along with these two players?
As you know, we've got a little bit of a time difference where you are and where I am. So it was at breakfast time that the Joe Thuney trade broke last week or 2 weeks ago now. And my jaw hit the table because you're talking about the Bears adding an absolute proven difference maker, a guy who has been a 4-time All-Pro, a guy who has 4 Super Bowl rings, a guy who has been dependable, which is a huge word here for the Bears offensive line because he doesn't miss time. He's missed 2 regular season games and 2 playoff games in his entire career. And so when you as a coach are able to just take your Sharpie and write Thuney into the left guard slot every single week of the season and have faith that he will play and give you his best when he's out there, that's a huge, huge luxury. I think that addition just instantly elevates the confidence of the interior line. Jonah Jackson, a couple more question marks there because of what happened for him in LA last year. And I still want to see some things with my own eyes to believe. Ben Johnson said directly to me when I asked him about, Jonah Jackson's 2024 season, he said, we're getting an all-pro guard or a Pro Bowl caliber guard, and that's what we're going to expect. I want to see it because he only played 4 games in LA. He had a position change and injury. It didn't go the way that the Rams expected when they signed him to a big deal. Jonah Jackson seems confident that he will be healthy and ready to roll. He reunites with a coach in Ben Johnson that he has familiarity with from their 4 seasons together in Detroit and feels like he's going to be used to his strengths. And then you add Drew Dahlman, the center, to the mix, and you go, wow, like in the matter of days, they took a major, major weakness on their team and strengthened it to a point where you go, this is pretty promising and is a really good infrastructure to put around Caleb as he tries to make that year 2 jump.
I mean, it is interesting. As I say, we talk about the offensive line every year. And just now, for the first time going into a season, as a Bears fan, I feel 99.9% confident I can name 4 of the starting offensive line that are going to be there in week 1. And obviously, there's question marks. Braxton Jones, I think some people still have faith that he can come in and work with these new players. Others seem to be ushering him out the door fairly quickly. I know it's been announced today that Josh Connolly Jr. from Oregon, the left tackle, is going to be in for a top 30 visit. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Braxton Jones. But you mentioned Joe Thuney, a player who in 9 seasons has been to 6 Super Bowls and won 4 of them.
Yeah.
I mean, for a young player like Braxton Jones, who is still trying, I guess, for some people to prove he deserves to be there, how big a difference can that be for him, having that all-pro player right beside him if he is the left tackle going into the season?
No question, that can make a difference. And you can trust what Joe Thuney tells you. You can trust what Joe Thuney sees. And so like that is a huge advantage over there to creating cohesion. And again, like that dependability and that reliability that he's going to be on the field creates the chemistry that the Bears have so sorely lacked in the last few seasons when it felt like every quarter there was a new combination of 5 on the field. And you're going, well, what happened? Like, you're just readjusting every single series, it seemed. So yeah, that can be beneficial to Braxton Jones or whoever's playing out there. It'll be really fascinating to see how the Bears approach this draft. Because I think we would all agree that creating depth and competition on that offensive line is the next step. And they're going to have some opportunities to do so in the draft. It just depends on which page they turn to in the Choose Your Own Adventure book that they have on draft weekend, because that's going to be a fascinating 3 days, for them to decide how they want to continue fortifying this team. I think they have 7 selections left in their draft wallet now. 4 of them are in the top 75, so you can add guys that can contribute right away if you make the picks right. And so that's up to Ben and Ryan and their respective staffs to get those right.
Absolutely. I mean, we can jump into the actual free agency here now. But as you mentioned, obviously, when the draft comes, I mean, it feels like they have maybe just given themselves a little bit more wiggle room and a few kind of extra options to make the decisions when they go in. Because obviously, you mentioned Drew Dahlman. He was the first name off the board when the Bears were fairly quick out of the traps to get him. Then we have the, Grady, Jarrett, Dio, Dengbo. Obviously, Durham Smythe came in previous to that. And then Olamide Zacchaeus. I'm
you got that right. You did very well with that one.
And then obviously yesterday we have Devin Duvernay comes in. Yep. Sorry, I'm kind of I'm trying to. Am I pronouncing these names right? Yeah, and then I'm forgetting what I'm saying. But Duvernay comes in yesterday. So when you look at this free agency class now, as I say, they've maybe given themselves some options. As I say, we've sorted out the interior of the line on paper potentially, which looks really good for Caleb. What do you make now of this class that's come in so far, the moves they've made and some of the players that hopefully will have a big impact this year?
Little cheat code for you on Zacchaeus. I'm just referring to him as OZ, so then we don't have to actually
OZ.
pronounce it. So you can call him OZ going forward, and we'll be out of those woods pretty quickly. It's been a good group. Um, Look, you needed depth to your receiving core, and you've added a couple pieces there, both in Duvernay and Zacchaeus, that can be depth pieces, as well as like Zacchaeus is a blocker. Like, he is going to be really willing to get in there and do the dirty work. And Ben Johnson said something at the combine: no block, no rock, which I thought was a good little philosophy that all those receivers in that offense are going to have to learn, that there is some dirty work demands at that position, and you better invest in them. Otherwise you're not going to see the fruits of the football coming your way. Adengbo to me is a fascinating one because he just feels like the quintessential free agent signing. You're gambling on potential. You're giving him a lot of money to be that complementary pass rushing threat opposite of Montez Sweat. But the production in his first 4 years in the league hasn't been at a level where you go, yeah, absolutely, he's going to be a difference maker. How many times over the years have we seen the Bears bring in a Pernell McPhee, a Lamar Houston, a guy like this who's young and has that potential, but then the potential only goes so far. And so I'm going to be really interested to see how Dennis Allen works with the Dengbo, creates a role for him, tries to push him in the right direction. I think we're all in agreement that the Bears will probably try to use the draft to add some pass rushing teeth as well. So maybe there is a younger player who comes in and can grow and develop a little bit. But look, like, you still have needs to go. I think they still have somewhere around 30 roster spots to fill with the draft class, undrafted free agents, the third, fourth, fifth waves of free agency. So as productive as the offseason has been to this point, you can't take that deep breath and go, we're finished, because to become a championship level team in this league, you better have quality depth. And the Bears need to establish some quality depth on both sides of the ball, both lines, and that's probably the next priority.
Yeah, no, they definitely do. So they have filled some holes, but there still is depth there that a team needs to go and win games. But when we look at the moves made, especially like the Joe Thuney and the Grady Jarrett players who are older, who, maybe you might get another couple of years at kind of a top level, does that kind of say that, as you mentioned earlier, there's still pressure there? Like, this isn't just a team rebuilding with a new head coach. This is a team rebuilding with a new head coach who is still expecting to go into a tough division. We saw what the other three teams done last season, the NFC North, but they're still expected to go in there and challenge. This isn't, we're making moves for the future, like Adengbo. We are also bringing older veterans in who we expect to get production from now straight away, and we expect this team to challenge. So it would basically, that's the way it is this season. I guess the Spurs team are expected to build this new roster together, but still challenge this season. Three tough teams.
This is the challenge of being a general manager and a roster building decision maker, is that you have to get yourself immediate answers, which the Bears have done with guys like Thuney and Grady Jarrett. But you also have to be looking at 2027 and saying, man, what do we have, lined up so that we can, if we are successful, we can sustain that success. And so we don't know how much gas is left in Joe Thuney's tank. We don't know how much gas is left in Grady Jarrett's tank beyond this season, and so you have to continue building the depth there and finding answers and finding younger, cheaper options that you can plug in when those guys' time comes to an end. Grady Jarrett's arrival was really fun a week and a half ago. I'm sure you caught some of the press conference with him at Hallis Hall. You talk about a guy that has juice. I mean, like, he came in and you could feel the energy and enthusiasm that he has. His college coach at Oklahoma, at Clemson, who's now at Oklahoma, Brent Venables, said that he lives his life with a 4th and 1 mindset, which I love that sort of description, because it's a description of urgency. As a guy that comes out to practice every day and works and demands the same things out of his teammates that he's giving. You could feel that. You talk about winning the press conference. Grady Jarrett won his press conference because he was up there exuding an energy and a passion and an ambition, right? Like that guys will buy into, especially from a guy that's been in the league for 10 years and produced the way he has. So that's going to be a fun one in 2025 to watch how he can impact this team. But again, beyond that, you got to be constantly looking for answers and understanding that this isn't just a 1-year process.
Absolutely. And in terms of his impact on the team, say obviously you're expecting a player coming in to hit the ground running with his experience, but also similar to Thuney with Braxton Jones, can he be that kind of mentor to show Javon Dexter, Zach Pickens, players who I think, Dexter flashed last year, but I think you still kind of expect more. And Pickens hasn't been the player I think people had hoped. Can he also have that dual role of being there for these young players to show them what it's like in that position in the NFL and to kind of help maybe mentor them along to see if they can get the best out of their potential that the Bears saw when they drafted him originally?
1,000%. Like Grady Jarrett will change the vibes in the defensive tackles room, right? And he will change the vibes in the huddle, and he will change the vibes at practice. And you better, if you're one of those young players trying to make something of your career, attach yourself to his hip, watch what he does, see how he handles his business in the building, in the meeting room, when he goes home, how he takes care of his body, do all the things that Grady Jarrett is doing, and you'll give yourself a chance to have a chance. And so there's no question. I think the Bears are banking on that leadership rubbing off on the guys around them. And then now you got to just kind of put that entire puzzle together. I look like this defense is interesting because they are a little bit more established, right? And they were supposed to be more successful last year than they were, but you got a group of players there that can play at a high level. Now you add another one in there to be a tone setter, and there should be a little bit of a boost, and certainly probably some energy for Dennis Allen and figuring out how to play this game of chess.
Absolutely. And when we looked at the draft now, Dan, I mean, it's I think the Bears are in a fascinating position. As I say, they fill some holes, but there are still needs there. And bringing those players in, like I say, on the offensive line, shouldn't preclude you from bringing in a young player if you see someone there who you think may be the left tackle of the future going forward, if that's the way it kind of plays out. But where do you stand on this now? Because I've seen a lot on Bears Twitter, go for the D-line, go for the O-line. I'm seeing people saying, you know what, if Gentry is there now, I'm taking the running back. Others are saying, you're not taking a running back. That's ridiculous. Where do you kind of stand on, obviously depending on where players fall? I mean, if quarterbacks go higher than people expect, hopefully they do, that might push players a bit further down to the Bears. Firstly, I mean, where do you think the Bears are actually, or where would you like the Bears to go? I know nobody knows what the Bears are going to do, but where do you think they should kind of concentrate that first pick?
I stand in a couple of different places. First and foremost, I think the menu that they're going to have to choose from when the 10th pick comes up on the board is going to be really cool. It's a good year to be picking 10th because most draft experts see only two real superstar players in this draft. And so then when you get beyond Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter, you've got a bunch of guys who are kind of just depends on how each team sees them. And so there could be a player that one team would draft at 3 that another team wouldn't draft until 14. And so when the Bears pick comes up, there's options. There's going to be fun options that are going to fill a need for them. And so they're going to be pretty excited regardless of what comes up there. I am not a subscriber to the knee-jerk reaction that you cannot take a running back at number 10 if he's available. I think there is a common sort of flaw in draft analysis where it's understandable why it happens, that the number 10 pick is the most important thing that the Bears have, but they also have 6 selections beyond that. And if they feel like they have their board graded in a way where they think that they can draft linemen, offensive linemen, defensive linemen in rounds 2 and 3 on day 2 and get themselves some immediate contributors, and that buys them the opening to gamble on a toy for Ben Johnson, then I'm all for it. If Ben Johnson tells his bosses that either Ashton Genty or Tyler Warren or Loveland from Michigan, like if one of those guys stimulates his creativity in a way where he's like, this guy could be really fun to work with, and I could use him this way and that way and this way and that way, you got to listen to Ben Johnson. And so I'm all for those conversations being very, very in-depth, very, very serious. And if they think that Ashton Genty is a can't-miss, surefire prospect that's going to take their offense to new levels, and the opportunity costs on passing on offensive or defensive linemen there can be addressed with the other picks that they have in the top 75, 3 other picks in the top 75, go for it. I'm cool with it. And I will have no pushback if that's the direction they decide to go.
Yeah, I'm similar myself. I mean, I wasn't kind of predicting them to go running back or even kind of thinking about it, given, the issues on both kind of lines. But as they've kind of plugged certain holes, I've just found myself thinking now, if Genty is there at 10, I mean, how exciting could that offense look if this offensive line does do what we hope? And I still think Braxton Jones, I mean, I think people are writing him off as a lost cause. I don't think that's the case. He definitely has issues to work on. But again, when you say the other 4 guys are pretty much set and you hope will be really good. They might take that little bit of time to gel. That's just natural. I think if you can add a Genty in there, the DJ Moore, Roma Dunze back there with Caleb Williams, I just think that offense looks, it looks exciting and it looks fun, as the game should be. It could be fun and exciting. You trust Dennis Allen on that defense, as I said, the head coach of the defense, to kind of get that together and do what he needs to do, and just let that offense, just let it go and see what they can do if they had that kind of talent. So for me, I've kind of talked myself into, if he's there at 10, I would absolutely love for them to take it. But again, you trust the Bears, and Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles know exactly what they want, and they're in a good position, as you say, of the players available. But look, if you can make it a bit more explosive, a bit more exciting, that wouldn't be too bad on a Sunday evening.
You're paying Ben Johnson a lot of money to be a guy that you trust, right? Like, so trust Ben Johnson, in your words. Like, just lean into the success he had in Detroit. Understand that he knows how to call games at a high level. He took a Detroit offense that had pieces to work with, obviously, and it turned him into the most explosive scoring offense in the NFL last season. 68 touchdowns the Lions scored during the regular season. Noel, the Bears had 33. So if that stimulates your imagination, so if Ben gets in those draft meetings and says Ashton Genty is the guy I have to have, and he's available at 10, cool. Attach yourself to that wagon and roll with it. You mentioned another thing about it should be fun. Ben has said a couple things in the early going here as head coach that I enjoy. One thing he said is that he understands he's in the entertainment business, which is why he is on a weekly basis looking for one of those gadget plays that really gets people talking and stimulates their energy. It's fun. And I think he leans into that fun. And then Caleb said something when on the day Ben was introduced that Ben relayed to him that it's okay to want to embarrass your opponent. And I sat up straight when I heard that and was like, I love that. Like, there's a little bit of competitive psychopath to Ben Johnson, where when the game's over, he'll shake your hand, he'll smile, say great game. But like during those 60 minutes, he wants to embarrass you. And I'm cool with the head coach of the Chicago Bears wanting to embarrass the team on the other sideline.
Absolutely. Go embarrass them all. I'd absolutely love that. That would be just something to look forward to. It kind of brings it back to, the Devin Hester days. You could get that kind of explosiveness. He used to go in every Sunday just waiting to see what he could do. Well, hopefully a Ben Johnson offense can start making us excited about going in on a Sunday and seeing what they can do. But again, Dan, I really appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, I know you've been kept fairly busy with everything going on, but I do appreciate you jumping on. If you want to let the guys know, where they can find you and anything they should keep their eye out for coming up.
Yeah, you can follow me on social media at X at Dan Wiederer. My written work can be found at chicagotribune.com. The podcast is called Take the North. Get over there. I just have a new colleague this week at the Chicago Tribune, Sean Hammond Knoll, who's just started with us this month. Tremendous young talent, good writer. He should come on here at some point as well. He joined me on our most recent episode of the podcast. So good discussion there. And yeah, always fun to come on and talk. I hope we're able to connect again soon.
Absolutely. And yeah, obviously it would be great to have Sean on, and anybody else who wants to come on, they're more than welcome. I love just jumping on talking Bears. But yeah, no, that would be brilliant, and I really appreciate that. And obviously thanks to everyone for watching and listening. Please do like and subscribe. Obviously it does help a new channel like this. And until next time, take care.